which are the different steps inside a music production, what is producing really, what is mixing, what is mastering, what is stem mastering, what is stem mixing. Now. Hello and welcome to Lacave-Insight. I'm M4G and this is the podcast from musicians to musicians. Our main topic is today music production steps. So I would like to go through all the different steps needed to have at the end a full song. The main elements of a song are composing and arranging. That's made by the composer and the arranger. The lyrics written by the writer. The recording is done by the recording engineer and the musicians, of course, and the singer. The editing is mostly done by the producer and sometimes together with the arranger. The final arranging is done by the arranger and the producer. Responsible for the mix or the stem mix is the mix engineer, and at the end it comes to the mastering and the audio mastering by the mastering engineer. I also would like to explain in this tutorial the difference between mastering, mixing, stem mix and stem mastering, because it's not always that easy to explain, because a lot of people think mastering is something different, and sometimes both are right, because this is a historical thing, and I will try to clear this up in this tutorial today. It depends on the production size, how many people are involved. So it could sometimes be 5 writer and 6 composer and 2 arranger. Most of the time it's only 1 producer fitting all the people together and try to get the song at the end finished. Sometimes everything could be done by just 1 person, or the producer does all the things like composing, arranging, writing and mixing, and at the end he sends out his final stereo file to the mastering engineer. So there are a lot of possibilities how a song could be made. Let's start with composing and arranging. That's basically the first step when creating a song. So that means creating harmonies, creating melodies with instruments or with the voice and vocals, searching for the right instruments and sounds if you're, for example, using VST instruments. After this is done, then you need to create the part of the songs, glue the parts together that it actually becomes a full song. In general speaking, the main parts of a song are an intro, and verse, chorus, bridge and outro. But that is really genre specific. For an EDM track, for example, you have the drop and the build up before. So I try to speak in general, not really specific to a genre. When you have composed your main parts, then it's time to arrange the different parts to actually get a song out of it. So arrange the right order, link the different parts between, so it's actually a song and not only one part, another part, another part. The worst thing you can do is just copy and paste your parts you have created before together, and then you have not a full song, it's only a file where you set it up, all the things and all the parts in an order, but not a full song. So you try to link the parts together after copying them and try to make a full song out of it. When this part is finished, you come to the lyrics stage. So writing the lyrics and sometimes creating the vocal melodies. After that, it's recording time. So you jump right into the studio with the musicians, the singer, the recording engineer, whatever. Recording all the real instruments plus a doubling of them, recording the vocals, recording the main vocals plus a doubling, backing vocals, sometimes with doublings, and the choir vocals as well if you need them. When the recording is finished, you come to the editing process. The editing is mostly done by the producer and not by somebody else. Me as a mix engineer, I sometimes get all the vocal tracks and then they say, here you can mix the song, where I say no. I'm the mix engineer, I'm not the producer of the song, so please make sure, please select all the vocals, edit them, I show you now, and then it's time for the mixing. The part of the mixing is not editing all the recorded files. So editing the instruments is selecting the best takes, of course, then time align them, tune them and layer them if needed. After that, do the same with the vocals, or sometimes you start with the vocals and then add the instruments. So selecting the best record tracks, time align them, tune them, and if you think you need some more harmonies, for example, then you can create harmonies out of the recorded vocals with the melodyne, for example. The final arrangement stage is be done mostly by the producer and the arranger, of course. That means to keep a balance between all the different instruments, so between the vocals and the other instruments playing. That could be achieved by adding or removing sometimes vocals or instruments. For example, if you have got your vocals set it up in the mix or in the rough mix in that case, because mix comes afterwards, then you hear it and then you see, oh, there is an instrument playing the same frequency range as the vocals, for example, then you have to remove it or maybe pitch them higher or lower or choose another sound that it better fits together. You should always keep the mixing stage in mind when you do the arrangement. So always try to do a good arrangement as good as possible. Choose very good sounds, very good samples, record the best things you can get, use very good musicians. And of course, try to layer the frequency and the instruments as you need them, and not to pull everything together and at the end it's totally muddy. And then the mix engineer has got a lot of problems to separate them and build a good stage for the whole instruments to make a good song, you know. In that part, I'm adding musical automation, adding sound effects and creating the vocal musical effects. So that means chopping up the vocals, play with them, creating new stuff like this. That is now possible because we have the recorded stuff. And now we can rearrange with the recorded stuff the full song. Now let's go to the mixing stage. So mixing in general means that you get all the files of the producer, of the composer, of the arranger, single tracks, and you need to put them together to get the best sound as possible. So that could be achieved by using levels, using panorama, using filters like EQs, and creating rooms and spaces with reverbs or delay, for example. Sometimes you need to edit the files a bit and enhance the overall sound, of course. It's very important at this stage that you talk as a mixer and engineer to the customer what he really wants or what he needed. Because some producers do send you a very good rough mix and it only means that you just have to enhance it. So adding a little bit of glowness, a little bit of magic dust at the end, but the overall mix is still fine. Some producers don't like their rough mix, so they send you with the files reference tracks from other songs and say, hey, this is a track I like and I would like to sound my song sound-wise like that other song. So it's very important at that stage to have a good communication with the customer. So what are the main tools of a mix engineer? He has got filter and equalizers. He could change the dynamic with compressors, for example, expander, multiband compressor, whatever. Transient designers. He could create room and spaces with reverb and delay. He could adjust the stereo field from different elements or from the overall song with stereo spreaders, chorus effects, something like this. He could add distortion and he could add special effects like flanger and stuff like this. Now I would like to show you a quick overview over a mix project mixed by me to have a better understanding what mixing really is. So this example, I have separated the vocal process here in that folder and all the other instruments in that folder. So let's open up the vocals. You can see here all the different elements. Main vocals, backing vocals, another backing vocals, the choir vocals. So all the elements are here still available. And when we go to the instrument folder, you can also see all the instruments available. So here, for example, are some percussions, here are the claps. Then we go over to some other percussions. Green are all the drum instruments, except the bass drum. Bass drum is red. Then we come to the bass. This here is the bass sound inside the track. Some synthesizers, some lead effects, some background effects. The thing is only that you understand that I have got, as a mix engineer, when I have all the different tracks available, I can really do a big amount of change inside the sound. What is the output of a mixing session? The output of a mixing session is mainly a stereo file to go on with the audio mastering, or stem files for a final mix or a stem mastering. I come to that point later. So that means you create a stereo file or you create some stems. Most of the time it's vocals, it's drums, it's main sound, it's background sound, it's effect chain. Then we have the ability to only have a stem mix. Stem mix, if when you have not all the full tracks available, you get grouped tracks by the producer or by the arranger, and then you create your mix down with that. So only grouped tracks, more options than a single stereo file, but less options than you have all the files available. Again, I show you a quick example how a stem mix could look like. So you can see it here. We have got really less instrument. So we have got the bass drum, a bass, in that case I copied it because I did some processing on it, the drums, some effects, some main melodies, some background melodies, some uplifting effects, some ad-libs, in that case the vocals over there, and that's it. The benefit of a stem mix is it could be done really quick in comparison to a normal mix. So it's most of the time cheaper and it saves the producer money. When do you need a stem mix? You've got two options for that. The one is you've got a producer and arranger, they know what they do, so they send you out really good stems and you have to tweak them just a little bit to make the overall sound better, and then it's finished. The other thing is you've got a producer who's not that experienced or he don't want to spend that much money for a full mix, so then you can offer them a stem mix. For example, I offer stem mixes for a lot of EDM and dance producers who are doing a good job but need a really better sound at the end of the day. If the production is finished and you have got your final stereo file from the mixing process, then it comes to the mastering or the audio mastering process. So this is a really hard topic and I would like to know what you think about. What is mastering for you? So please write it in the comments, because it's not 100% clear what mastering is in these days. That's why I want to show you how it was years ago and what it is now for the most of the people. First, we have to make clear, what do you really mean? Do you mean the real mastering process, the pre-mastering process, or the audio mastering? Let's step a few days back in the history, and I hope I can make things clear for you. Back in the days, when you have got CDs or even vinyls, then the pre-master was very much important, because that was the last chance to adjust the stereo audio file to fit to the specifications and the recommendations of a record. So that means if you have got a vinyl, then you have got a very small bandwidth, for example, for the bass. And if the bass is too wide, stereo-wise, then the needle wouldn't follow the lines exactly at the vinyl. So that's why the pre-mastering process was very important, that the mastering engineer could make sure of the song that it could be played on a vinyl player. Also, collecting the tracks in the right order was part of the pre-mastering process, creating fades and pauses in between the tracks, assigning the ISRC and the EAN code for the CD, for example. And at the final stage, the pre-mastering process was finished by creating the positive CD to create thereafter the negative glass master from it. And here we come to the mastering process. So the mastering process back in the days was basically only the thing that you get the pre-master, and now you create the glass master of it, where you can now do your copies for your CDs or your vinyls. So that was mastering, and this is why some people say, oh, mastering has nothing to do with audio themselves, it's just a physical process. So yes, they're right, but today mastering is something different, or could be something different, because when we talk for mastering, then we basically mean the audio mastering. And the audio mastering is a process you can do inside your DAW, for example. So you don't need a specific mastering software for the audio process, because you just enhance the stereo file, that it sounds as good as possible, as loud as possible. You try to compare the song with another song and try to get them close to each other. So if you're creating an album, it's really important to make sure that all the levels are the same, so that you can press one song and then play the other song, that they sound almost the same level and they sound almost in the same frequency range. So adding the stereo file means enhancing the audio, tweaking some frequencies, adding the dynamic, so with compression and limiting to achieve a loudness, removing the DC offset, for example, cut the file, so create fades for in and out, of course. Sometimes you add meta tag for the WAV file or the MP3 file, and assigning our ISRC and EAN code. And this is now not part of the audio mastering process, this is part of the mastering process, because, and that is the important thing, when you would like to assign the really important meta tags or the ISRC or the EAN code, or create a physically DDP mastering image out of all your tracks, then you need a specific mastering software, because normal DAW couldn't do that, like Cubase, like Logic, like Pro Tools. You need for that a specific mastering software like Wavelab, for example. So long story short, mastering isn't always the same. So people talk about mastering, but they mean sometimes different things. So for example, some people mean only the audio mastering, so adjusting the audio file, doing dynamic things, doing filtering things, for example, cutting the length and remove DC offset. Some other people mean by mastering the fully mastering process to create a CD or a vinyl. So please keep in mind that both are right and both are wrong if you're talking with them. Now I want to show you a mastering project, an audio mastering project inside my DAW. For example, I split that process. So I do the audio mastering stuff in Cubase, and then I switch over to Wavelab, import that file, and then I do the final things, like cutting it, like adding fades, like removing DC offsets, creating the meta tags and the ISRC code and stuff like this, and of course creating the DDP image if it's necessary, or exporting the final WAV and MP3 files with their tags. So let's head over to Cubase, and now you can see it's a really small project. It has got only one track, one reference track, and that's it. Now when that process, the audio mastering process, is finished, I load everything up in Wavelab. I show you now. So now we are in Wavelab, and then I remove always DC offset. Then I cut the track. So for example, at the starting point, 50 milliseconds, creating a fade in if it's needed. Go to the end, creating a fade out, and then add all the metadata. This is part of the final audio mastering process for me if I only need to export WAV files or MP3 files, and if the customer doesn't need a DDP file. I hope this tutorial will help you out, and it will clear up the things a little bit, as these steps are not 100% the same for everybody. So you see, for mastering, for mixing, for all the different types of genres, of songs, of sounds, it's always a bit different. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you like it. Hope to see you soon on this channel. That was Lacave-Records, Lacave-Insight. See you next time. Bye bye.